Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to introduce our guest keynotes for this closing out of the program. We have Joint AI Center Director Lieutenant General Michael Groen and Ili Bajraktari, Executive Director of the Congressionally Chartered National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. Welcome. AI is certainly an exciting area for the federal government, defense, and frankly, every other sector in society around the entire world. But if we don't collectively harness its potential, we do risk falling behind. This is the message our keynotes are going to talk about over the next half hour or so, specifically about NSCAI's highly publicized final report released last week. It's what the Commission describes as an actionable winning strategy for the US to come out on top in this AI era, or what they also call this revolution. So to start us off, Ili, we'll go over to you. With the Commission's start 2 years ago, describe what really went into this report and give us some of its highlights from your perspective on how these recommendations can drive change from a national standpoint.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor and privilege to be on your show today, but also to share the stage with Lieutenant General Groen. He's a great friend, a great partner, and we would have not been able to produce our report after 2 years of hard work if it wasn't for General Groen's team and the JAIC. I believe General Groen leads one of the most groundbreaking offices in the Pentagon today, and so we're all rooting for him and his success. To answer your question, Congress about 2 years realized three things. AI is a really powerful tool for national security purposes. They realized that China has moved out, it is well organized and it's well resourced. And Congress understood that we don't have, it's like a top-down approach that is well resourced on our end. So they created our National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence that I had been privileged to lead the staff for the last 2 years. And the goal of this commission was really to provide the White House and the Congress with concrete recommendations about how can we accelerate adoption of AI for national security purposes. As I used to say to a number of audiences and a number of engagements we had in the last 2 years, the purpose really is, the mandate was clear from Congress that we need to accelerate adoption, and we have to identify ways and means to maintain global advantage for artificial intelligence for national security purposes. Congress picked 15 commissioners. They're well-known individuals, technologists, academic leaders, and notable national security leaders to lead this commission. So as you mentioned, this past week on March 1st, we submitted our report to Congress and the White House. And the report in 759 pages really provide a concrete blueprint for the steps that our national security departments and agencies need to take for us to maintain advantage on this really important technology that could shape our economic, social, and ultimately, our security domain. So just to quickly talk about the final report, it's out there. You can download it on our website, www.nscai.gov. The report is divided into two big parts. The first part really is what the Armed Services Committee asked us to do, is to provide recommendations in how we defend America in the new AI era. And so we provide recommendations how our government can responsibly use AI technologies to protect the American people and ultimately our interests, but also it focuses on implications and applications of AI for defense and national security. The second portion of the report, the remaining 8 chapters, talk about how do we win the technology competition. So we recommend actions that our government needs to take to promote AI innovation, to improve national competitiveness and protect critical US advantages in the bigger strategic competition with China. So Amy, as you noted, the report is out. We have received a tremendous feedback so far. Now it is really up to the White House and the Congress to really take our recommendations and act, because as we noted and General Groen highlighted in the speeches this week, we need to be AI ready by 2025.
Fantastic. General Groen, I know, the Defense Department has had an AI strategy of its own. We're basically looking at it right now with your leadership at the JAIC. The JAIC has been instrumental in creating things like the enterprise level solutions for AI across the department. So from your point of view, talk through how JAIC is really helping accelerate AI across the entire department. What importance does AI have for the overall national security mission?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I really appreciate the opportunity. Really, thanks for having me. And I want to say thanks to Illy as well. I mean, when he says they've spent 2 years on this, you have some highly credible, high-powered commissioners and a fantastic staff that have poured through every, all of evolving technology, all of the missions of defense, all of the geopolitical kind of constructs. I mean, it is all there. So I really highly commend the report to the listeners. And if you don't have time to read 759 pages, just like read the summary stuff. It's really good. There's several different versions of summaries that have some of the recommendations. And I think a lot of users will look at some of those summaries and think, wow, these are high level. Somebody in the government needs to do something. I would encourage you with every one of these things to just peel them apart and figure out, okay, how can you do something to make these things real, right? Because it's hard to articulate, even in a short report of 700 pages, like all of the fidelity of things that have to be considered as we try to improve the department's status in AI implementation. So to directly answer your question, so the JAIC is an implementation organization, right? So there are many think tanks in this town. The JAIC is a do tank, right? So our job is to take like all the work. You just had a great panel of research and development, research and engineering stalwarts from across the department and elsewhere across academia. Fantastic. Our job is to take that goodness, stuff that they develop and transition it into real capabilities inside the department. And so we work with academia, of course. We work with the research and development organizations. We work with companies, small innovative companies, everybody who's got good ideas in this space. And we try to bring that together and implement that across the Department of Defense. We are not a research and development organization. We have great relationships with those organizations, but our job is now to transition and actually to build capabilities inside the department. So that's what we do, right? So we accelerate the implementation, we accelerate the integration, and our kind of our mantra is really driving transformation. And no surprise to the audience here. When you work in the Pentagon or you work in some other secure facility, if you're in the IC or whatever. When you walk out to the parking lot every night, you turn your cell phone on and suddenly you join a connected enterprise that allows you to do almost anything. You can get advice about anything. You can get any services you want. You can buy things. I mean, you name it. I'm not telling anybody anything. But when you go inside the Department of Defense, you don't have that experience, right? And so, you have young soldiers, going out to the parking lot with their iPhones to get information about defense programs, for example. Like that's unacceptable, right? So I think there's a lot of drama, about artificial intelligence in the Department of Defense, et cetera. We're not talking about Terminators here. We're talking about making the department as efficient and effective as any corporate USA company is, right? And so for every taxpayer, I mean, the department is about 3 million people, including all the armed services, $700 billion a year. If there's one agency, one area in this nation that needs to be competitive in the AI space, it's the Department of Defense, right? For any number of reasons. I would just like to comment on, we're going to focus, or I'm going to focus at least on the defense aspects of the NSC AI report. But I would encourage everybody to look at the rest of it too. I mean, when you think about AI as a, what they forecast maybe a $16 trillion enterprise or market in, by 2030, $16 trillion enterprise, right? For American competitiveness, it is absolutely essential that we compete, right? That's how our economy grows. That's how we continue to maintain, the prosperity and the continuity of our government and our way of life. I mean, it is real. It is about defense, competing in the defense area with China and others. But it is just as much a story of American competitiveness that we have to protect and grow. So inside the JAIC, we're broadly, kind of our primary methods of operation here. Broadly enable is kind of our first mandate. So across all of the organizations, the services, the agencies of the department, our job is to kind of help them on their journey to AI. We don't necessarily build AI for them. We do in some cases. We don't necessarily fund, their transformation, although we help in some cases. What we do is build partnerships with these organizations and then help them achieve their objectives in the AI space. So we work hard. Our success is absolutely measured in the success of others. And so that's what we're after, is trying to spawn a broad transformation across the department, making lots of agencies, organizations, services really effective in the AI space. And I'll leave it there for we can pull that string if you like. Thanks.
Great. It definitely does span. You say it loud and clear. It does span, more than just DoD, but DoD is such a huge part of that, and we certainly recognize that. Illy, the Commission's report places a heavy emphasis on the global scale of AI, and obviously the General just touched on that a little bit. Why does taking action on these recommendations advance the nation on a global scale? Where are we right now in terms of the competition globally? Can you really put together for us what those opportunities look like?
So let me just quickly talk about where are we right now in terms of the competition. We spent a lot of time in the last 2 years really analyzing whatever the factors are out there you can analyze in open source in terms of where are we and our competitors regarding AI. Obviously, the United States and China are clearly the two world leaders in AI. And while we believe the United States is still the leader, this lead is rapidly eroding. So let me tell you how we did this. In assessing how we and the China compare, we compared the 6 subcomponents of the AI stack. And let me just go quickly over all of them. Number 1 is hardware. Number 2 is data. 3, algorithm. 4, applications. 5, talent. 6 is the ability to integrate across all other 5 areas. We believe the United States has the greater capabilities in AI-related hardware, algorithms, and talent, but Beijing has advantages in data, obviously for reasons that we all know, applications, and lastly, integration capabilities. The Chinese are aggressively attempting to obtain leadership in all 6 portions of the AI stack, at which time they would have the overall leadership in the AI. So, as our report says, we must double down on our existing advantages and better compete with them in the areas in which we are currently behind. So let me just quickly go a little bit into a sub-detail for each of these components. In hardware, we lead in hardware, because we lead in the hardware because we are the world leader in chip design. However, it does not, we don't have the capability to manufacture cutting-edge hardware domestically, which is a key vulnerability for us. The Chinese are spending aggressively to become a leader in chip production by 2030. And if you see the latest articles in Wall Street Journal and today New York Times, they're even putting more money and efforts to accelerate this. So we need to reshore cutting-edge semiconductor fabrication capabilities to ensure we continue our advantage in this space. In terms of data, China has systemic advantages collecting and pooling data due to their political system. So it will be really difficult for our country to contest China in this area alone. But we need to work with our allies and partners to better share and pool data so we can compete more effectively in this space with China. Algorithms, United States has a slim lead in research on AI algorithms. China is rapidly closing this gap and could overtake the United States within 5 to 10 years, it is our assessment. This area will also not be a sole source of systemic advantage for us, given how many algorithms are open source that you can develop. So we need to double annual federal AI R&D spending every year from now until 2026, so we reach the point of $32 billion by 2026. Applications, as I mentioned, China has a slim lead over us in AI application, as it has proven capable of deploying AI at scale, and it is far ahead in certain applications, such as smart cities and facial recognition. We also need to make DoD AI ready by 2025, as I mentioned, and establish regional AI innovation clusters to diversify our commercial ecosystem. In terms of talent, United States has a slim lead in AI talent because our firms and universities still attract the top researchers. China is putting a lot of resources on AI talent. It's aggressively courting top talent from around the world. The fact that many top researchers in the United States are foreign and do not have a path to citizenship could cause this advantage to diminish in the near future. We need to pass STEM immigration reform to keep this key talent in the United States. And lastly, integration. China leads in its ability to integrate across the AI stack, as it has a clear path to utilize and advance its AI capabilities, and is supporting, and it has a tremendous support backed by resources. No such organizing body or strategy exists in our country. So as we recommend, we need to establish a Technology Competitiveness Council at the White House to coordinate decisions and develop a national technology strategy to ensure our efforts across the AI stack are mutually reinforcing.
That's a great look at some of the milestones that are up and coming over the next decade, and certainly very aggressive milestones. I mean, we hear the urgency in some of these things and why it matters so much. General Groen, DoD is in the midst of vast transformation, largely that's spearheaded by JAIC. What does that transformation look like, and how would the recommendations outlined in the report kind of help the department in that journey?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great question, Amy. I mean, it's complex, right? And so there are 1,000 flowers blooming across the department, and that's really good news, right? And some services are way out in front. Some services are doing really well. Some services are still, in the early phases. Of the 20 agencies, that are part of the department. I'm talking about things like the Defense Health Agency, the Defense Logistics Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, et cetera. Some of them have good and growing mature AI efforts. So it's really, it is not like we're starting from zero, right? So we've got a large number, when I say flowers blooming, and that's really good. It's too early for us to start culling a herd, which is kind of the natural process in the Pentagon, right? If there are more than one, you quickly focus on which ones are the weakest, and you cut them so that you can feed the strongest one. We're not at that point yet, right? We need more flowers blooming across the department. What's lacking though is now this idea of how do you coalesce all of these small AI developments into cohesive enterprises, into warfighting enterprises, into logistics enterprises. All of the capabilities that have to evolve from small beginnings. There are a large number of development platforms, for example. So people are tinkering with machine learning and trying to train algorithms and that sort of thing kind of across the board. But like an integrated warfighting AI-driven enterprise, that still eludes us, right? We are not at that point yet. So a lot of these recommendations kind of, we're in early stages, and you can kind of see the challenge out there, but we have a lot of work to do to get to the point where we can address some of these recommendations, because we have to build the right foundations. And this is this has been and is a challenge. The Pentagon is designed to do things in stovepipes, right? I mean, it's the nature of the Pentagon, but it's also, I think, purposefully built that way in the early days. So now where, our historic approach was the large program approach, right? Where the Department of Defense built a requirement, paid for the research and development of new technology, new capability. Some of that trickled out into the commercial space, but it was delivered back to the Pentagon as a large program. That doesn't work for AI, right? So AI, you need a software engineering model, a software engineering approach, where you have to take good ideas from a mature commercial technology environment that has mature AI, and bring that into the department. And it's kind of working the machine backwards. And from a cultural perspective, the machine doesn't run backwards very well, right? So the machine kind of has to be retrained to take technology in from external sources and turn that into capabilities, not by the delivery of a large piece of kit, but through taking that technology and doing iterative development into those warfighting enterprises, or those logistics enterprises, or those intelligence enterprises that really start to make a difference for AI application across the department. And I'll just make one key point here. When I say logistics enterprises, intelligence enterprises, fires enterprises, maneuver enterprises, command and control enterprises, the common factor here is it's not just about the tech. It's about functional experts, and it's about functional experts owning the challenge of integrating AI into their, into their systems and into their functions. I heard one of your earlier speakers talk about, you have to understand process. Exactly. Process is everything, right? So as we talk about implementation, what we need is process owners, leaders inside the Department of Defense, and I hope I'm talking to a bunch of them now, leaders in the Department of Defense who have to take on this challenge. What is your process? How could AI drive your process better? Could you make better data-driven decisions? If you can start answering yes to those things and understand kind of where you are in the journey, then pick up the phone and call 1-800-JAIC, right? Or send us a text or go on ai.mil and get in contact with us, because what we would like to do is help you on that journey, right? And again, we deal with customers who are, very advanced and folks who are just starting on the journey, right? And so we want to drive broad transformation. It is the responsibility of process owners and leaders in the department to make this transformation happen. And if you're one of those people and your organization has not thought about the integration of AI yet in your business processes, in your, your functional processes, then you're behind, right? You need to catch up with the rest of the department. So I challenge you and ask you, if you're a CIO or a CDO or a process owner, please, let's get on the train to help the department get become a modern, efficient, and effective enterprise. Thanks.
Fantastic. That's a great look into those partnership opportunities too, with all facets of the industry. So I'm glad you highlighted that. This question's a little bit for both of you. Is there anything noteworthy or something particularly worth discussing with us that you learned about AI, Illy, over the course of this project's past 2 years and your involvement in it, and of course your extensive background at the department and General Groen over your past 6 months at JAIC?
Well, Amy, the one thing that was I come from a government background, so I didn't have extensive AI background, so we had to rely for the last 2 years really to in engaging and discussing and really reaching out to people that have AI expertise, people that have developed AI for the last couple of years, even decades. But the really one thing that surprised me in the last 2 years was, anytime you work in a policy issue in Washington, there are equities, there are bureaucratic infighting. But maybe for the first time in my career, I was surprised by the willingness and hope among many government officials, private sector representatives, academic leaders, to help us get our mission right. It was fascinating that everybody understood, I think, that what we need to do right now as a country is to get AI right, because AI really represented an important opportunity to advance our economic and social well-being. But ultimately, this will have a security component associated with that we want our country to have, or our warfighters that General Groen here represents, really the best tools for the next generation of, competitions we're about to enter or we have entered. So with that, Amy, I was really surprised by the willingness and hope of many actors to help us in the last 2 years to really come to this product we submitted to Congress and the White House.
General?
Yeah, great. So building off Illy's comments, I think, so one of the things that was I guess expected, but it's kind of shocking to see, the stovepipe nature of developments within the department, right? Because now when you start talking about things like JADC2, for example, which is kind of the headliner construct for this, netted architecture with any sensor feeding any decision maker, et cetera, that's all really exciting. You can't do that without an enterprise of capability, right? You can't do that with an operationally oriented platform or set of platforms, a fabric of platforms. And so, it's really important for us, I guess when I came into this job, I was thinking small. I was thinking about, oh yeah, here's a machine learning algorithm. Here's how we train it. Here's how we do this little task over here. Those things are really important. They remain really important. But what really kind of like stares you in the face is, yeah, that's cute. how are you actually going to fight with that, right? How are you actually going to link Air Force capabilities and space capabilities and Marine Corps capabilities together to create, real capabilities? One of the things we say is, hey, we turn technology into capability. We do that by taking technology to the process experts, the mission owners, the functional experts. If you have a team that can speak tech, can speak warfighting, can speak government and how government makes decisions and how things are resourced, okay, now you have a powerhouse team. It's not just tech, right? Tech is just a small piece of it. It is committed leaders who understand their processes and say, wow, you know what, we could do these processes a lot better. That again, not a surprise per se, but the scale of the Department of Defense and how many of those leaders need to kind of pop their heads up and go, holy cow, I'm missing the train here. I need to get working in my space. That's intimidating, right, from the outside. So transformation is a big deal. So is the Department of Defense.
Yeah. So Illy, this final report, I mean, we've talked about it just a little bit already. It faces Congress and the White House for action. So we understand that, and we've discussed the gravity of what that means. We'll all be seeing how that plays out in the near term. In an earlier panel, we've already learned of similar moves, such as the DoD's adoption of DIB's AI ethics principles, which was over a year now. It seems like yesterday. But now that the report is done, what is the Commission's role now, and what do those next steps look like with collaborations with JAIC? And the work is far from over.
Thanks, Amy. No, you're absolutely right. So as we have submitted our final report last week, that doesn't mean the end of this commission. HASC and SASC really were smart enough that they built an extra 6 months in our tenure, because they thought that for the next 6 months we should be able to socialize and provide any kind of a help to Congress and the White House in terms of understanding, the background of these recommendations, why we ended up recommending these actions for federal government to take now in order to accelerate adoption of AI. So from March until October, where we end, we will spend an enormous time socializing our recommendations. We have already met with the Secretary of Defense last week. General Groen was in that meeting as well. So I'm hoping General Groen will take the baton inside the department to really focus on the implementation mechanism, and JAIC is probably the best suited in terms of like trying to understand what are some of the recommendations that we can do now, some of them that are more midterm and some of them that are more long-term. And I think under General Groen's leadership, we can really see some kind of a big movement inside the department, as I said, to be AI ready by 2025. Congress, we have a big hearing tomorrow with a HASC where our commissions are testifying. We have had enormous partnership with Congress so far. In FY21, there are already 19 recommendations we submitted last March. And so we will spend the next couple of months really working with the Armed Services Committee to see how many of these recommendations will make it in the next NDAA. Some of our recommendations really are beyond just the Armed Services Committee, because we have some really big ideas in terms of talent, especially in creating the United States Digital Service Academy that is beyond just a Armed Services Committee responsibility. And so, as I said, we're here to help. We have about 6 months now, as I mentioned, to socialize and really see, the execution of some of the, low-hanging fruit recommendations. For some of the big moves, we hope that the White House and Congress take real ownership and drive it from a top-down perspective. And General Groen has been a tremendous partner here, so we will continue working with him and his staff in the coming days and months.
Fantastic. General, just to piggyback off that a little bit, do you have any sort of idea of what's more like high priority in the near term versus what's can be pushed out more?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good sense. Thank you, Illy, for the to-do list. We really appreciate that. But honestly, it's fantastic work. The good news is, we're in execution. We're on a parallel path. I mean, we're actually working on a lot of these already. Maybe not to the scope and scale that the NSCI AI report articulates, but that's okay because we'll grow into that space, right? So I think the department is kind of really waking up to this. I mean, you can almost feel the grass grow under your feet here of AI just kind of springing up all over the place. So that's really good. But I think one of the challenges again is going to be integrating all of these stovepipe efforts into an integrated enterprise, right? We've got to be able to work together. We have to have seamless interaction. And that means seamless interaction, like our approach to network, authorization and, being able to operate on a network. I mean, we still have to this day, defense customers, who have to take Navy data, put it on a hard drive, fly it to an Air Force base so they can get on an Air Force network to transmit to another Air Force place so they can push it to a different element, in the combined or in the joint force. Like, okay, that's unacceptable, right? Where we're moving data on hard drives because we won't allow each other access to our networks across the department. So there's some real foundational, digital modernization work that has to occur to make this possible. Our cloud strategies have to mature. Our integration of modern software engineering has to occur. This idea of network sharing and our network topology, and we have, rightly so, kind of contracted in a defensive crouch here, with all of the attacks on our networks, and that's been necessary. But we have to figure out ways to still get the job done, right? How do we cross credential? How do we, and then if we can do that, then that creates all kinds of opportunities for sharing algorithms. For example, if the Navy has an inventory algorithm, the Army should be able to benefit from that inventory algorithm, or the Marine Corps, or any other type of algorithm. We've done a lot of work in preventive maintenance, for example, for aviation platforms. Those algorithms look strikingly similar, right? So if you train them with new data, it's actually the same algorithm, right? So we need to be able to share those algorithms. We need to be able to share training data. And then critically, we need to secure all of this, right? So we have to have the ability to share, the ability to cross networks, the ability to work from clouds or data centers, with our own compute capacity. But we need to be able to secure the whole business. And this is kind of one of our primary challenges. It's just like this big shadow, like over everything that we do. Like, are you vulnerable here? Are you vulnerable here? Are you vulnerable here? And the answer right now is yes. And we've got to figure out how to close those loops.
That's a fantastic point. Illy, would you like to add on to that?
No, I'd just like to say that General Groen doesn't have an easy task ahead of him. Anytime you introduce these kind of offices that are seen as a disruptors by the bigger DoD community, you always have antibodies. But I think we all agree that this is such a powerful technology that the Department of Defense will benefit really by adopting as quickly as possible, and by building the digital backbone required for this kind of technology. And I think General Groen really, as a commission, we early on understood the importance of JAIC. And then so we recommended elevation of JAIC to be a direct report to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. And under General Groen's leadership, now he's taken that role and responsibility, I believe, because the FY21 really took that recommendation that we provided to Congress and elevated JAIC. And I think that is the rightful position for JAIC until it matures to the point that, AI is in everybody's background, that we're not talking anymore about AI. When I say AI ready by 2025, all the issues we discussed today, from people to the digital infrastructure to the backbone that DoD needs, I hope that we have it in place, that we don't have the same conversation again in 2025. And so I think the department should really be behind the JAIC's effort, and General Groen's leading this effort is critical for us to really make this leap forward.
General, do you see any issues or challenges ahead in as this AI ecosystem gets built up and established and grows? What are the challenges with holding these services accountable? I mean, you've detailed the data sharing issues, and as recommendations theoretically will get adopted. How do you see that challenge playing out?
Again, it's a question of scale, and this is why we're approaching the challenge like we are, right? So it is a huge to-do list, It's a hard to-do list, but it's not the JAIC's to-do list, right? It's the department's to-do list, and everybody who owns one of these processes, everybody who owns a function has the obligation now to okay, let's turn this into something real and let's start stitching it together. This is why our approach, and the idea, you know, I think Illy mentioned a kind of a cultural ramification, which is true, right? So an organization, you know, that comes in, you know, and says, hey, we're going to help you do these things. The natural antibody is, okay, well, wait a second, you know, I'm already doing these things. The last thing I want is somebody to look over my shoulder. This is why our entire approach is enabling, right? Like, we want to make other people successful, right? So we're not, the JAIC's not driving this. What we're driving is a relationship with folks. So we understand, hey, where are you on your journey? Do you need help doing a data readiness assessment? Do you need help with an AI algorithm development? Do you need access to data somewhere that we may be able to help you with? Do you just need access to a contract, right? Yes, we have a contract. Do you need market intelligence for companies that may have expertise in exactly your problem area? The JAIC exists to connect those dots, right, across the department to enable customers broadly. And we're hoping, you know, the wind that we provide, you will move out all these boats forward, right? And as their sails catch it. And so that's I think is how you get to transformation. So that's kind of like the bottom-up approach. From the top down, it is going to be important, though. At some point, we do have to issue directives and authorities, you know, from the department level to say, okay, no, actually, we are going to build this warfighting enterprise, and here's how you plug in. You know, so some of those technical process platform details are going to have to be, you know, driven by department leadership. But I think department leadership is very ready to do that, right? They want the goodness that comes from a cohesive enterprise. So we're just trying to help, you know, build as many partners in that space as we can, so that we can do warfighting, right? So that we can do things like JADC2, so that we can create enormous efficiencies in the department, right? Just through enhancing our business processes. So there's AI applications every corner in this 5-sided building here. And so, you know, you just walk down the hall and you can see them, right? Like, oh, you know what, we could AI this, we could AI that. I'll give you a quick example. So we got a task to do an inventory of all the AI efforts across the Department of Defense in this appropriations bill for 21. And we were thrilled with that task. Do you know why? Because in a normal environment, okay, the data calls would go out. We would send emails. We would be calling people. We would try to ask, you know, people, hey, is there any AI under that desk over there? Instead, we wrote an AI that went through all the data that the department already has on resource expenditures, on AI development, on platform development, and we were able to use an AI to compile all of that data, not just once, but anytime we want it, right? And to me, that's just such a powerful example of, okay, if you take a different approach to your process, an AI, data-driven approach to your process, whatever your process is, imagine how much better it could be. That's a tiny little example. We want to set a good example, but you know, to me, that was just like, it's just powerful because it just right in your face, like, oh, no kidding. Let's use AI to measure AI, right? And it's that kind of thinking, stepping away from how you do business today and thinking about how you should be doing business. And if we get our process owners to do that, I think the implementation of all of these recommendations kind of flows naturally from that, because people are going to want to have trained workforces. They're going to want to have secure platforms. They're going to want to have ethical foundations that, you know, that really result in trusted AI and trusted AI ecosystems. So that's exactly what we're trying to pull together across the department. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Amy.
Well, thank you. We are just running out of time, but this was a fantastic look at some of the exciting opportunities ahead for AI and the work that JAIC is working on. And of course, Illy, all the efforts that you've put into this report. And I'm excited to see what's coming up ahead. And I thank you both so much for sharing your perspectives.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you, Illy.
I'll now hand it back to Mike Hoffman to close out our program. Thank you.